That's the big thing for him. For long, mature builders, right? So we should, I think it should be like drop. Look at Ralph Gordon, baby sand.
Okay, folks, we'll call our meeting back to order. Has the live stream been restored? Okay, I'm told the cameras are working and we're good to go. So we will return to our discussion of our last item under correspondence for decision, which is around the provincial property tax, indeed transfer tax bill 149. Prior to break, I believe Councillor Musa was on deck to speak. Councillor Musa?
Before we return to that, can you announce who voted yay and nay for the?
Oh, my apologies. I neglected to list the opposed for the public hearing. So the motion carried. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't write it down at the time. Councillors Hebb, Eisner, and Mitchell voting nay.
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about the letter to the province, right? I read through that report and I saw something that if you lease your property to a resident, you're not supposed to pay. I don't know if I got it right or no, but I think Councilor Rhino, I agree 100% with him that we should have a report about that whole bill. Thank you.
And if I might, I guess from what I'm gathering, I think everyone is somewhat in agreement about the lack of consultation by the province in this. And would I be correct in saying the province directly impinging on what is traditionally a municipal revenue stream, property tax, is of concern? And other than that, personally, I think it makes, we're in the midst of trying to develop an increased tourism, particularly in our shore area. And seasonal folks invest in communities, and they spend money in communities, and they are involved in communities. And I think it will make it that much more challenging to develop that type of community. But that's my opinion only. Councillor Garden-Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I just want to weigh in on this briefly. I do believe that they needed to come up with something, but what they came up with too quickly and without consultation to the people that it mattered to, like the municipalities, was somewhat misdirected, if I can say that. I do believe that something did need to come up, that they did need to come up with something. I just am not in agreement with how they did it and what they did, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
And that's been a source of discussion in many places too, yeah. So the motion on the floor is to write a letter. I would be intending in any letter that I wrote to capture the lack of consultation, the fact that the province now taking what money from a municipal source of revenue, what's traditionally our only main source of revenue, I would probably also express concerns about possible unintended consequences to the economies of many areas in the province. And does that meet with everyone's approval? Or a majority's approval? If anyone doesn't agree with that, could you kind of push your button and... Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Total agreement with Councillor Garden-Cole about something had to be done, and I'll just use New Brunswick for an example. If you own more than one property in New Brunswick, whether you're a resident or not, on that second property you pay double tax. That's the way it works. And if you look at Moncton and Shediac and all those areas, they have plenty of seasonal people. If you are a couple and you each own your own home and you get married in New Brunswick, as soon as you sign that marriage license, one of your houses now becomes double taxed. So this is what's happening in our region. Again, like I said, I think consultation should have happened. Like it's something that we can't ignore. That should have happened. However, there are other plans out there. There's non-resident stuff that happens in Prince Edward Island, and if you look at their cottages and their communities for tourism, it flourishes. So without knowing more of the exact details, some of these things that are coming out, to me, is almost fear-mongering in my mind, because people are making radical claims where this is happening in other places in our region, and they don't seem to be as concerned as it is right here. So for that reason, I will support any letter saying about consultation. We don't know what the consequences are, so we can't say whether they're positive or negative at this time, because we just don't know. Thank you.
Yeah. That's why my wording was that we were concerned about possible unintended consequences that the legislation might cause. So I've put out there what my intent would be in the letter, so a vote of support, that's what will go. If that's in disagreement, then Councillor Rhino.
I'll support that way of thinking. But how, should there be a second motion to ask for a staff report on the issue to talk about this issue further?
I think we could have that following
Following
this motion, because we may have more, the province doesn't know the answers yet.
Yeah.
They have put this through, and passed it, but they don't have the details yet, so.
Because I think.
There is an opportunity to still have some small influence on what it looks like, because they haven't settled on the details yet.
I think it would be very good to, once we have, the information staff can give us, to analyze that information and see how it's going to affect each and every district, by councillor in here. Like, it could have different things in different areas. So that's why I asked for a report and a chance for discussion on this. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed with a vote of 9-1, with Councillor Perry voting nay. And I would also make note that at our normal directors meeting on Monday morning, the MLA will be attending this Monday, and I will certainly take opportunity to try and press him for any details that he might have on this. Okay. Councillor Rhino.
Staff report be prepared and brought back to executive committee, outlining the pros and cons of this bill and a discussion on how it may affect East Hants municipality. So moved.
We have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Tingley. Being aware that we don't know how much information staff will have available by next month even, so we'll hope for the best. Any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously. That concludes correspondence for decision. Moving along, we will go into committee reports. We'll start with Corporate and Residential Services Committee. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on April 19th, 2022, virtually via Zoom. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. The presentation by the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities and FSM model. Miss Juliana? No. Juanita Spencer and Paul Russell from NSFM presented information on the NSFM 2022 plans for organizational change, and councillors had their questions answered by NSFM. Presentation, Corridor Community Options for Adults, CCOA. Ross Young, Jim Arthur, and Linda Coolin from CCOA presented information on the Corridor Community Options for Adult Expansion Project, and councillors had their questions answered by CCOA. A subsequent staff report will be presented at the May Corporate and Residential Services Committee meeting. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to council the ask of the corridor community options for adults be brought back for discussion and a report on possible sources of funding be brought back by staff. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question?
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Council procedural policy. An annual review by council of the council procedure policy per section 1.4 of the council procedural policy, as well as an opportunity to finalize housekeeping items and consider updates identified since the last review. After discussions at executive committee, the assistant municipal clerk has more information to share as requested regarding the use of alcohol. At that time, I'll ask Shirley to present that.
Go ahead.
Staff did do a little bit more research since the executive committee based on questions and direction at that committee. We've concluded that there are no other municipal units that we could find or the provincial legislation that has policies that prohibit the use of alcohol. So if council would like to have that section removed from the draft policy, it would be appropriate for a motion to remove section 2.6.12 before you consider approval of the policy.
Thank you. So does anyone want to make a Councillor Green?
I would move that we remove section 2.6.12, prohibiting the use of alcohol prior to and during breaks from council and committee meetings.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Head. Councillor Rhino, you were on prior to the motion? Okay, any further discussion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
The Corporate and Residential Service Committee recommends to council approve the council procedural policy as attached to the April 19th, 2022 Executive Committee agenda with the proposed changes. Chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Green. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Final item, polling district review report number 3. The Director of Planning and Development presented another report on the 2022 polling district review, which discussed proposed public consultation for phase 1 and provided a judicial scan showing voters per district within comparable municipalities. The councilors had their questions answered by staff. As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Green. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, motion is carried. Excuse me. Next, we will go to Planning Advisory. Over to you, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on April 19th, 2022, virtually via Zoom. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. Item 1, Plan Update Background Paper, WCDD Designated Properties. As part of the ongoing plan update, planning staff are preparing background papers to discuss and propose approaches to different land use issues within the municipality. In September 2020, Council passed a motion C-2256 directing staff to review WCDD designated sites in the corridor. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council direct staff to prepare amendments to the MPS that would change the designation of lands in Enfield that are zoned R2T from WCDD to MR and change the designation of lands zoned R2 from WCDD to ER except for lands currently part of an application from Elmsdale Lumber. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Perry. Discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Item number 2, amendments to the dangerous and unsightly premises policy regarding excavation sites. East Hants Council passed motion C-21-317 at their October 2021 meeting, which directed staff to prepare a report to investigate options to secure construction sites. At their February 2021 meeting, council approved amendments to the bylaw P900 building bylaw, which requires certain construction sites to be fenced. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council approve the amended dangerous or unsightly premises policy, which includes a new provision for a risk of falling into an excavation related to construction as a dangerous premises, as attached to the April 19th, 2022 Executive Committee agenda. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Musa. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Item 3, Bob Bona, application for rezoning was dealt with at the public hearing. Item number 4, FH Development Group, WCDD application. The municipality is considering an application from FH Development Group for a development agreement to enable the construction of a walkable comprehensive development district neighborhood consisting of single-unit, two-unit, townhouse, and multi-unit dwellings. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council authorize staff to schedule a public hearing for the application by FH Development Group to enter into a development agreement for a WCDD in Elmsdale. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Item number 5, plan update background paper, village core zone. As part of the ongoing plan update, planning staff are preparing background papers to discuss and propose approaches to different land use issues within the municipality. The current background paper discusses updates to the village core VC zone. The proposed amendments will clarify text, resolve interpretation issues, address requests from staff and EBD, and address issues brought to the attention of staff by residents and developers. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council authorize staff to draft proposed amendments to the official community plan in regards to changes to the village core VC zone, as presented to Executive Committee on April 19th, 2022, and outlined in this staff report. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Garden Cole. Any discussion on the motion? Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So John, those changes are gonna increase the capacity, like to be able to build more on a village core, or no?
Through you, Madam Warden, yes. So the maximum square footage would increase a little bit, yeah.
And most of those village core are on Highway 2 or Highway 14 and stuff?
The area of Village Core isn't expanding, but it would apply to the Mount Uniacke Village Core as well.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about where we're doing, like the corridor area. Most of, like in Enfield, they're on Highway 2, right? Most of them.
Correct, yeah.
And in Elmsdale, Highway 2 and Highway 4.
As well as Milford and Shubenacadie.
So I see us going in two directions this way. With the next one, the MC zone coming in, we're gonna decrease because a lot of traffic, and now we're gonna increase the capacity, not looking at traffic. So we are contradicting ourselves here, and we should be looking at doing something. It's either we go with development or it's either we go against. But right now, we're doing two different things that go, I don't know, what do you think about that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the amendments are pretty modest in terms of the increase in size. There are things that, as EBD, Graham in particular wrote, talking to people, were finding that there are issues, that things are just a little bit too small in the core village. And then there were some design changes, things like the amount of glass you have to have in front of there were a lot of changes like that. So I don't think they were, they're not dramatically different than what's there now.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm 100% with that. But for the other one coming next, I'll speak about it later. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to staff. So these were, when I first looked at this yesterday, when I was reading these over, I was thinking of them as kind of housekeeping issues. You talked about buffers and things like that. So remind me again, was this the one with the, it could be residential above? And what are the changes here? Can you outline those for me, please?
There are several. There's a whole
As far
table
as
in
square
the-
footage and increasing.
The square footage, I don't have it in front of me, actually, the amount that it's increasing, but it was, I think, something in the neighborhood of 20-30%. I can look it up if,
Okay.
yeah. Here. Okay. So the current maximum gross floor area in the zone is 835 square meters. If a property owner adds a ground floor commercial use, the maximum gross floor area before a development agreement is would be 1,020 square meters, thereby giving the property owner a bonus in gross floor area of 185 square meters. And staff are also recommending that buildings where the entire ground floor is used as commercial floor area may have between 1 and 12 dwelling units on the floors above the commercial use, for a building like the Cup of Soul, where you can add the residential above. So maximum commercial floor area, EBD staff suggested that 230 square meters was too small for a footprint for a single-use commercial building. So that's proposed to go to 400 square meters for just a single use. So that's not a mixed use where you have residential above. And I think those were the major changes. I don't know if that answers
Okay.
your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else, Counselor?
No, thank you.
Any further discussion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously.
Item 6, plan update background paper roosters. Council directed staff to propose a method of regulating roosters in the serviced areas of the municipality. Staff proposed limiting roosters to lots greater than 6,000 square meters. The committee felt this limit was too large and would like the issue explored further. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council direct staff review any other regulations rural municipalities have in place and look at the average lot size in the growth management area to come up with a solution to managing roosters. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Counselor Hebb.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to staff, I circulated a piece of information a resident had sent to me, and is that something we could work into this report to look into?
Yeah, certainly, Madam Ward. We'll look into it and add it to our report.
That would be great, because it might solve a lot of issues and quite simple if it works. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed by a vote of 9-1, with Councillor Musa voting nay.
Item 7, plan update background mixed-use center zone. The background report is in response to council directing staff to conduct a review of the mixed-use center designation and zone that was put in place in 2016. The report looks at the mixed-use center current regulations, proposed development, and previous zoning. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council direct staff to review zoning in the areas outlined on the map to see what type of zone could look like to encourage residential and some small-scale commercial as has been discussed. As chair of the committee, I so move.
We have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Garden Cole. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. John, those building under site plan approval, they all came after we decided to do that, or they came before?
Through you, Madam Warden, it's a mixture. Some are quite old, like they initially applied in 2020 or 2021s, and some more recently. I don't know exactly
Yeah,
when they
because
all came in.
I was surprised by the number, like,
Yeah,
the number of, I was wondering if our approach had brought, like, backfired at us, because you said back then, we don't know how the development community is gonna react, so I was wondering if it backfired at us. And anyway, I'm not gonna support the motion because we're singling one or two properties, and I don't agree with that. Thank you.
Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So through you, we had mentioned at the last meeting the possibility of a moratorium being put on this. And I guess I had mentioned that to you, John, and you didn't feel that was a possibility, but you were going to look into it from a legal standpoint and see if there's any way of.
yes, through you, Madam Warden. So I did go back through the MGA and looked at the a couple of relevant sections. Like the only way I think you can impose a moratorium is through what's called an interim planning area, and only the minister can do that. And what the Act actually says about interim planning areas is that they'll only implement them. Well, it's a tool that they use if they feel a municipality's not, their planning documents aren't in line with provincial statements of interest. And so they basically request of the municipality, bring their documents in line, and if they don't, they can implement an interim planning area. So that's the only type of moratorium that I've seen. Other than that, there's sort of a moratorium after you give first reading to something. So if we had proposed to change this entire area to some other zone, and council had given that first reading, once you give it first reading, and then once we publish that, so that typically we publish that when we advertise for public hearing, we wouldn't issue any permits between the time that we advertise that first reading has been given until a council decision is made. Or if it takes too long, then 150 days expires and a permit can be issued. But that's, and I was going to go back to the solicitor, which I haven't had a chance to do yet, but I think those are the only two ways that there's anything that approaches a moratorium.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Question has been called. And the motion has passed 7-3 with Councillors, Deputy Warden Mitchell, Councillor Musa, and Councillor Perry voting nay.
As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Seconded by Councillor Perry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion has passed. Next, we will move to Parks, Rec, and Culture. Over to you, Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Warden, members of council. Committee held its regular meeting on April 19, 2022, virtually via Zoom. The following motion is coming forward as a result of the meeting. 2022 tourism grant applications. The Tourism Grant Program provides single-year financial support to nonprofit, community-based organizations whose purpose is to operate a tourism attraction or facility and whose focus is on attracting visitors from local, national, and international markets. So from that, the Parks and Recreation and Culture Committee recommend to council that the tourism grant funding recommendations totaling $27,000 be approved for the following organizations. Chart Society, $4,000. East Hants Historical Society, $5,000. Maitland District Development Association, $15,000. And Walton Area Development Association, $3,000. And that staff release approved funds is confirmation of external funding sources for proposed projects I received from each group. As chair of the committee, I do so move.
Seconded.
Seconded by Counselor Green. Is there any discussion? Deputy Warden Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to staff, could you refresh me on the Chart Society, what that group is? The rest I understand, but it just feel vague on the other one.
Through you, Madam Warden, the Chart Society, their particular application is actually for extensive repairs to a church that they use for, they want to put off plays and things like that, and the group wants to repair the overall building, but the main project is the, excuse my pronunciation, the belfry. And that's been the project for the last 2 years. They actually applied to do the same project last year, but they didn't receive the extensive government funding, federal funding that they applied for.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Madam Warden, that is the end of my report. As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Seconded by Counselor Hebb. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion has carried. That brings us to infrastructure and operations. Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on April 19, 2022, virtually via Zoom. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. Number one, a space bylaw. Council approved a pilot program for clean energy supports in 2021. This report outlines the program's next steps with a recommendation on first reading of bylaw IO-500. This to be dealt with later on in the meeting during the first reading. Item number two, curbside collection contract 2023 to 2028. The municipality's curbside collection contract has just begun year 5 of 5, with the current contract expiring March 31st, 2023. The RFP for the services was issued on March 9 and closed April 5th. The Infrastructure and Operation Committee recommend to Council that Council approve the award of the curbside collection contract RFP 50458 to Royal Environmental included, with a start date of April 1st, 2023 for a period of 5 years with a value of $6.8 million. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by Counselor Hebb. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion has carried. Moving along, we will now go to the nominating committee report. I guess that's me, so I'll turn the chair over to you, Deputy Warden Mitchell. Thank you. The committee held a meeting on April the 21st, 2022, virtually via Zoom. The following motions are coming forward as a result of this meeting. Police Advisory Committee public members. The nominating committee recommends to council that council appoint Ruth Ann Greeno and Greg Densmore to the Police Advisory Committee to the end of the current term to April 2024. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Any comments or questions from council? Questions being called, we go to the vote. And the vote's passed unanimously.
The nominating committee agreed to recommend to council that council appoint the following public members to the Accessibility Advisory Committee: Pam Kay, citizen at large; Tanya Burke, stakeholder community; Linda Coolin, stakeholder community; and Janesta Kimball, stakeholder community. As chair of the committee, I so move.
It's moved in second. What is your wish? Questions being called, let's go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously.
As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Give the chair back to you, Warden.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Next, we go to the first reading of bylaw IO-500, Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, PACE. Who is taking that
Who's
one?
got the, that would be Eli.
Councillor Musa.
First reading bylaw IO 500 Property Assessed Clean Energy Program PACE bylaw. Council approved a pilot program for clean energy supports in 2021 that staff presented a report on next steps, including the development of a bylaw at the April 19, 2022 Executive Committee meeting. A draft bylaw was considered at the same meeting. The Infrastructure and Operation Committee recommend to Council that Council give first reading to bylaw IO 500 Property Assessed Clean Energy Program PACE. As chair of the Infrastructure and Operation Committee, I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Perry. Any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed with a vote of 9-1, with Councillor Rhino voting nay. That takes us into the warden's report, so I will turn the chair back over to you, Deputy Warden.
Okay, I accept the chair. Go with your report, Warden, please.
A fairly short report this evening. We're only a couple of directors' meetings in the month of April due to our blackout date and as well as the Easter holiday. On the 22nd, I attended the regional caucus meeting of NSFM virtually. And as I mentioned before this evening, I attended virtually the NSFM Mayors, Wardens, and CAO meeting. I also was present actually in Commerce Court. I don't remember the exact day, to record a short video for Volunteer Week for the municipality. I haven't viewed it, so I never liked myself on video. Other than that, it was a short month. I do have a motion that I would like to bring forward, and it's about the proposed model change of NSFM that was discussed when on executive day when they did make a presentation. And I would like to send a letter of thanks to NSFM for making a presentation regarding their proposed model change and provide them with feedback as discussed last week. So as a result, I move that council direct staff to send a letter to the NSFM thanking them for their presentation on their proposed model change and provide feedback, including concerns raised by councilors during discussion, and that all municipal units be copied on the letter.
It's moved in second by Councillor Hebb. Any question? Question's been called. Go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously.
And that concludes my report.
Any questions to the warden? No questions, warden. I'll give you back the chair.
Thank you. We're now into business from councillors. I'm going to mix it up a little bit this month. We're going to start with Councillor Green.
Nothing at this time, Warden.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Warden. Yep, District 8, there's a few things going on. First thing, I'd like to thank Heather Lane and her group that took part in the Exit 3 cleanup as part of our municipal cleanup, the Exit Ramp program. They took out a tremendous amount of garbage. It's actually quite embarrassing how much garbage and waste that has been dumped illegally near the carpool parking lot and the Exit 3. It's definitely something that I think has to be monitored going forward. But they're going to take their money that they received for the cleanup and they're donating it to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada. So the money that we are provided for the cleanup group is going to go to a really good cause. So I really like to highlight that group and thank them for their efforts. I believe they did the same thing last year. And unfortunately, I think Mount Uniacke might still have the record for most garbage picked up by weight for an exit ramp. Not a record we want to have. Next, just to let people know here on council and everything else, the quarry located off of the Uniacke Mines Road is holding a public information meeting on May 10th for proposed expansion. They are proposed to expand from their current 3.99 hectares to a full 40 hectare quarry, which has obviously raised concerns amongst the residents. I will definitely be attending that to see the proposal and see what's going on there. I do know on the current size, when they do conduct blasting, 5 to 6 kilometers away, people's houses are being impacted from a 4 hectare quarry, a 40 hectare quarry. I don't know how that's going to affect people. So it's definitely something I think we should monitor as a council and have going forward. The last thing I have on my agenda for District 8 is that I circulated a motion earlier prior to the meeting, and I'd like to put forward a motion that we award the Uniacke Volunteer Fire Department a subsequent $8,400 to cover off the increased cost of the sports path project, which is currently underway. This will cover the fibered mesh that is required for the pad, and the funding source would come from the Uniacke Community Recreation Fund.
Seconded by Councillor Musa. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
That's all I have from District 8, and thank you to the rest of council for supporting that motion.
Councillor Musa.
Nothing to report at this time.
Councillor Tingley.
Yes, early in the month, April 3rd, was contacted by Carrie McDougall. She was a candidate I run against in the by-election. She's looking after the Lance Beautification group. Asked me to assist with removing wreaths from the poles there, and they're getting ready to put the flower pots on the poles. She coordinated all this with the help of the infield beautification people last year. So with a group of people, helped them remove the wreaths. She asked me if I could try to locate a place to keep their lawn tractor and where they could get their water. And I contacted a local property owner, Nino Fabrizi. I've never met him or just spoke to him on the phone once. He provided them with a location at Carolyn's Way to keep their lawn tractor, and he's going to provide them with water for free. So she's dealing directly with them from here on in, but she's doing a terrific job with this lands beautification. Attended the Milford Lions Club big breakfast with fellow Councillor Hebb there. That'll be in his district again, I guess. Helped serve the breakfast and hopefully enjoyed the sausages. April 22nd, with fellow Councillor Norval Mitchell, attended the East Hants Chamber of Commerce early morning breakfast. Cody Boyce was a speaker there, and I think you circulated some of the highlights of that meeting that the Commerce provided to the municipality. So you heard all you've read all the statistics. One statistic I didn't see in that write-up that he mentioned in the meeting is that the federal government estimate that there's approximately 3.5 million new homes that will be needed in Canada by 2031, and he indicated we're nowhere near meeting that need. A few other things, but that's about it.
Thank you. Counselor Rhino. Yes. Oh,
Thank you, Madam Warden. April 22nd, 2022, last Friday, the Nova Scotia Police Governance Association met. We held our annual general meeting. We also had a presentation by Haley Critchen, Executive Director of Public Safety and Security for the Nova Scotia Department of Justice. And from that, the presentation, she went over, basically the RCMP usually took a national priorities list to work from. Well, this government has basically said, we signed the contract with you. We want a provincial priority follow. So now the RCMP have to follow the priorities set forth by the Provincial Department of Justice with regard to what they want to study on. So that's kind of a big change there. We pay Nova Scotia's signing contract. We pay the bills, of course, and we have, at the local level, we can put in, through the Police Advisory Board, priorities with regard to what we would like to see in our municipality. The AGM saw everybody stay the same, and with that, at the next annual general meeting next year, we will be reviewing our existence. Basically because, our group is having a problem meeting with the new Minister of Justice. We've been put off. We were having a hard time corresponding with the Department of Justice themselves. It was mentioned that with regard to filling these vacancies on the board, we discussed that. We were having a hard go of it, and we were getting kind of put off a stumble. Well, we didn't get the words out of our mouth then, and then out came an email that said that they were, lo and behold, that they were starting to act on these board vacancies, and they were going to start to work away at these, and the police boards being one of them. So, we're going to really look at this, where everybody agreed to stay aboard for one more year, examine our existence, and if our existence, we're not making any progress, there's a good possibility this board may be disbanded next year if things don't improve. So that's my report on that one. Also, on April 22nd as well, Jean and Rod Daly of Urbania celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and I presented them with a certificate of recognition to that effect, wishing them well the following Sunday on that, their home. Madam Warden, at this time, I'd like to make some clarifications on points I've made previously at, in executive committee, if you'll bear with me. Several meetings ago, during a discussion around zoning requirements in unzoned areas of the municipality around the topic of campgrounds, committee was made aware of any land use requirements that would be created would only apply to on a go-forward basis, and that the campgrounds currently established would be grandfathered for any land use requirements. This being frustrating to me because I know of issues from residents who have experienced a change in lifestyle when new businesses ventures in rural areas establish themselves, and in brackets, legally, I might add, very close to property lines and residences. Many residents feel that they were there first and with no land use requirements to help mitigate problems that may arise, they feel that their way of life has been impacted. And this is why any business, not just a certain entity, this is with all businesses and new businesses that may come in. In the meeting, trying to illustrate the need for land use requirements, I gave an example of a certain business, a campground in District 5, that has a small portion of their property that borders directly adjacent to a residential home. And I gave examples of complaints a homeowner was experiencing in order to make a point. Mentioning this certain business and giving examples of complaints was taken by some, especially the owners, that I was demeaning them and was saying that they were a poor place of business. This, I assure you, was certainly not my intent, and I apologize for the way I articulated my concerns. My intention was to point out that without land use requirements being established for current businesses such as setbacks, fences, or tree buffers, these complaints have a great likelihood to continue, which is not good for either the business or the residents going forward. After mentioning these examples of differing complaints, I failed to inform the committee that these complaints were taken very seriously by the business owner and acted upon in a timely and professional manner, with most being acknowledged by the complainant at the time these complaints were relayed to me. In hindsight, I should have spoken in a more general term instead of being singular toward one business, and should have articulated more clearly my intent around the issue that arose. Again, it was clearly not an intent to offend anyone or any business whatsoever, and I sincerely apologize to Michael Hubley and Constance Manthorn of Shenanigans Campground.
Thank you, Counselor. Anything further?
No, that's it.
Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So this month I attended the CCOA monthly meeting, and they're always very informative as they approach their exciting new build that they're on the cusp of. Enfield and Bloom is ramping up for the 2022 season. Lots of development going on in Enfield right now. The major development at the top of Tyler Street is unfolding at a astounding rate up there. It's really worth going up to see if anyone hasn't been up there recently, to see what's happening up there. As well, the dental office project right in the core of Enfield, and also the big apartment complex right there by the hardware store with the commercial on the lower level. At this time, I'd also like to acknowledge the Junior C Championships that are starting tonight and taking place this weekend. I want to welcome all the participants and the families and anyone that's coming into the area of East Hants, and hopefully everybody will come out and support them, and good luck to everybody. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Eisner.
Right. Thank you, Madam Warden. I'd like to thank Department of Highways for putting some slow, no parking one side of the Monte Vista Road and the Renfrew Road. RVs were kind of encroaching right on the highway, so now they're just parking down the Renfrew Road, which is good. Everybody's still RVing. I dropped down to our MLA's office and gave him some slow down signs, and Jenna took them. That was nice. They gave out an award for John Feetham. He turned 89. He was a long residence for Enfield. So it was nice to drop that off to him. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Hale.
Thank you, Warden. It's been a fairly busy time in District 3. We have a lot of volunteer groups getting out doing things now, and because of the pandemic, restrictions are down, and they're anxious to get moving, and met with me on different projects they have on the go, and it's good to see. As Councillor Tingley mentioned, I was serving at the Milford Lions Breakfast this year, which is an ongoing thing, and they had a very good response there. And also I delivered a birthday certificate to Millie McPhee of Harvard Land, who turned 95. And very spry and very active, and kind of makes me look silly when I have trouble getting around and she can. So anyway. And in regards to Councillor Rhino's report there, I have to say that the gentleman contacted me and informed me that I made a remark he thought was inappropriate, and thinking back, it probably was inappropriate. I certainly didn't direct it at his campground. I made a general comment. I explained to him the reason why that I made the comment, no malicious intent to anybody, and he recognized the fact that, yeah, he understood where the comment come from. And I apologized to him, and he accepted my apology, and I guess for me as a counselor, we have to look at all sides of things when we say things. There's always two sides to every story. So thank you, Warden.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Warden. First off, I'd like to thank the Director of Park, Recreation and Culture for attending the opening ceremonies this evening on behalf of the municipality. I know she did a fine job and did us proud. I also, on Friday, April 22nd, attended the breakfast put on by the East End Chamber of Commerce with Councillor Tingley. A lot of the points that I was going to mention are on there for councillors to read, so I won't go over them. Affordable housing, he mentioned to be working with all three levels of government. I did ask him a question about the federal tax for volunteer firefighters and ground search and rescue people, and my concern was that because of COVID, the criteria couldn't be met by a lot of the volunteers, and they're going to lose out on that tax break, but he's going to look at it when he goes back. The co-trustees at the Regional Library Board met last evening. One of the highlights was an update to the private policy and also the staff confidentiality agreement. The same page, which is one library card for the libraries except for HRM, was launched on April 21st, and it's new, and so you can go to use it at any library across the province except in HRM. I'm having a question on the slow down signs. I don't seem to have much demand for them. I passed out 4. I have one on my lawn, but I'm not getting any uptake from anybody. I've got all those ones in the shed and some in the house by the door. So my question to council, is anybody else getting a big request for any?
Councillor
No,
Garden.
they're not.
Councillor Garden Cole.
So, thank you, Madam Warden. So I'll be honest, because I have a lot of complaints from my residents about speeding, and they, how can I put it? They feel that the signs are just a very small token of a problem that they were hoping to get a bigger response to, or a more immediate action from us. I've actually, approached people who I'd had numerous emails about thinking that they'd be putting them on their lawns. And while some people have, some people were not very receptive to putting the signs up because they felt that we should be doing more. I did explain that doing more doesn't happen that fast, and that it is something that we are looking into, and having some more concrete concrete ways of mitigating traffic. But that is a little bit of what I am seeing so far, and I'm not sure if anyone else has been getting that vibe or not, but thank you.
Councillor Rhino.
I had requests for 10. I put it out over Facebook that they were available. I put them on my lawn. Most people were positive of the initiative. Only a couple felt, that there's a bigger need. We should try to do something more, but for the most part, it was taken. The only complaint I had to go back to several and give them a double one because they're not double-sided. And that was the biggest thing, that wasn't double-sided. Now, my own, I drilled 4 holes and zip-tied them so they were back-to-back, and then used the one. But that was the one thing that they weren't. I still have quite a few, of a number, and most of mine went in the village of Maitland themselves, that people who have concerns about speeders going through the 50-kilometer zone above 50. So that's what I've found out in my area anyway. So.
Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And just to add, some of the ones I passed out, they were looking for double-sided, but fortunately, I have a good supply of them, so I was able to do what Councillor Rhino did as well, zip tie them, and they got 2. So thank you.
Just a question through you to staff, is there any other plans to mitigate the speeding, or what can we do?
Jesse?
Sure. Through you, Warden, there is a report on the books for an overall speed mitigation report, and so that's still outstanding, and that'll be coming up later this year. So that will go into strategies and approaches and different, more concrete type work. I'll just throw it out there where there's going to be speed bump suggestions in play. So I'll tip my hand. It's the how and the when, and that will be one method suggested.
I'd like to get some more traction on the signs, that's all. I got lots, and people whiz by, but they see my one sign, and I think that's all they see until they get over on Hemlock where the other ones are. But I'll do what I can, just might park on the street. Thank you, Madam Warden, that's all.
Oh, well, I guess I just, Councillor Tingley?
Yes, through you, Chair. Initially, when you gave out the signs, I had about 14 requests, and I didn't pick up any more signs the second time around. I haven't had any recent requests, but I had a complaint about speeding, or a couple of complaints about speeding along the highway in Milford towards the high school, and I just reached out to Sergeant Bushell to ask him, what he thought could be done, and he said he would just step up the patrol in that area for a while and see if they could tame it down a bit. So I haven't heard anything recently, but calling the police to just let them know that there's something going on. They don't necessarily know that where they're speeding, but there could be certain areas where there's more speeding, and if you call them and let them know, maybe they can look into it.
I would just comment that Councillor Tingley and Councillor Hebb have got a head start on the rest of us. They have served at the Lions Breakfast and practiced up for Volunteer Recognition Night that's coming up later this week. Anyway, yes, our Volunteer Recognition Night, as everyone knows, is being held in Rawdon at the Fire Hall, and council members serve the meal to the volunteers there. So you gentlemen have your practice run in. But I believe that concludes the the business except for setting the date and time of the next council meeting. May 17th, 2022 for the regular meeting of council for policy, and May 25th for the regular meeting of council. Is someone prepared to move those dates? Moved by Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Musa. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion is carried. I would now be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Green, seconded by the Deputy Warden. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion is carried. We are adjourned, so we'll let